Have you ever felt like your children are growing more distant, as if you no longer have a voice in your own home? There are evenings when you look at the cold meal on the table and quietly wonder, did I do something wrong for the kids to stop listening? I understand that feeling. Many parents in their 50s and 60s, after a lifetime of sacrifice and hard work to raise their children, find themselves feeling like outsiders in their own families. Their words now echo aimlessly in a room full of silence. The more they try to earn respect, the more they are misunderstood as controlling or bothersome. I still remember the story of David, 64, who lives in Oregon. After his wife passed away, he poured all his love into his two sons. He called often, sent food, and even drove for hours just to drop by. But one day, his eldest said bluntly, "Dad, I need my own space." That sentence felt like a punch to the heart, not because it was harsh, but because it came from the child he thought would always stay close and loving. If you don't recognize what's happening soon enough, you may get caught in a spiral of hurt, where your expectations are misunderstood, your kindness is taken for granted, and your family bonds slowly grow cold. But believe me, respect isn't lost. It's simply waiting to be rekindled through a new approach. In today's video, I will share 6 effective, gentle, yet profound ways to help you regain your children's respect without forcing it and without sacrificing yourself any further. If you're looking to rebuild loving connections within your family, click like and share this video, because it might just be the key for a friend of yours who's feeling the same way. And don't hesitate to leave a comment. Tell me, have you ever felt disrespected by your own child? Your story could be the light for someone else. Now let's begin this journey of rebuilding connection, not through lecturing, but through listening and transformation from within. When you feel unheard or disrespected, many parents' natural reaction is to do more in hopes of winning back their children's affection. But is that really the way to help your children recognize your value? Have you ever found yourself frequently agreeing to things that make you uncomfortable just to avoid conflict with your children? Have you ever wondered why the more you try to please them, the more distant they seem to become, even disregarding your opinions? Many parents, especially after retirement, fall into the pattern of living to please their children. From babysitting grandchildren to offering financial support, from changing long-held views to staying silent in the face of disrespectful words. All of it stems from a quiet longing to be acknowledged, loved, and respected by their children. However, this mindset often leads to an exhausting cycle. The more you try to seek approval, the more you unintentionally place your child in the position of judge, while you become emotionally dependent on their reactions. This blurs the line between love and submission. And children, whether knowingly or not, begin to learn that my parents will always endure, always give in, no matter how I behave. Respect does not come from saying yes to every request, but from knowing when to say no. Instead of continuing to seek your children's approval, it's time to return to yourself. Start by asking, what makes me feel at peace and true to who I am? When you begin to value your own worth, you create a different kind of energy, a quiet but steady confidence. And that very presence will lead your children to see you in a new light. You have the right to refuse things that make you uncomfortable. You have the right to express your views, not to argue, but to show that you are also an independent individual with value. When you stop pleasing unconditionally, you are teaching your children that love doesn't mean sacrificing everything, but walking alongside one another on a foundation of mutual respect. Here are a few steps you can start applying today. Pause the automatic yes. When your child makes a request, take time to consider it instead of agreeing right away. Even saying, "Let me think about it," is a way to assert your autonomy. Write down your boundaries. You don't have to share everything, but be clear with yourself. What are you willing to do? What makes you feel taken advantage of? Writing it down helps you strengthen your stance. Communicate without defensiveness. When you say no, keep your tone calm and clear. Don't apologize for doing what's right for you. Create your own sense of validation. Instead of expecting recognition from your children, spend time with positive companions or affirm yourself after every action that reflects your values. When you begin the journey of resetting boundaries and letting go of the need for approval, your children may not understand right away, but lasting change always takes time. The important thing is that you are stepping out of dependence and into the role of a grounded, self-respecting adult who deserves to be honored. And from that foundation of self-respect, we move on to something just as vital: how to lead by example without raising your voice or getting into arguments. No one wants to be looked down upon by their children, but the more you argue to reclaim respect, the more likely you are to be drawn into a whirlwind of negative emotions. In many families, conversations between parents and adult children can quickly become tense as both sides try to defend their viewpoints. But there is another way: quiet, calm, and powerful. Leading by example. Ask yourself, what do you want your children to learn from you? Stubbornness or composure? Yelling, criticizing, or lecturing rarely leaves a positive impact, especially when your children are already adults. What makes them truly listen is not loud words, but the consistency between your words and your actions. In middle or older age, you possess a wealth of life experience, and that is a strength. When you remain calm in the face of disrespect, when you don't react with hurt but respond with self-control, you are teaching your children the most profound lesson in respect. Instead of saying, "You can't treat your parents this way," let your actions speak. Don't overreact. Don't get pulled into emotional battles. Stay silent when needed, withdraw when appropriate, and always hold firm to your core values. When you show confidence through your behavior, even something as simple as calmly standing up and walking away from the table after being insulted, you are sending a message more powerful than any words: "I deserve to be treated better than this." Here are a few ways to practice leading by action. Stay calm when provoked. Take a deep breath and avoid responding immediately. A composed demeanor often makes the other person reflect on their own behavior. Communicate clearly. No need for long explanations. Something as simple as, "I don't accept that kind of language," is enough to set boundaries. Let go of the need to win arguments. Remember, you don't need to win over your children. You need to preserve your own dignity. Model behavior in small things: how you treat others, keep your word, and care for yourself. All these send powerful, unspoken messages about your values. When you carry yourself with self-respect, your children, whether rebellious or withdrawn, will notice. They might not respond immediately, but you are planting a new standard of behavior. No one respects someone who only talks, but everyone remembers someone who acted with integrity in silence. You don't need to argue to prove that you deserve respect. Let your actions speak. When you move with quiet strength, you leave a lasting mark, not through noise, but through depth. And once you've learned how to express confidence through your behavior, the next step is this: withdraw from emotional dependency. Learn how to find joy from within yourself. There is a gentle, yet profound truth. No one is responsible for your happiness, not even your children. However, many parents in their later years place too much emotional expectation on their children, as if they must be the source of joy, the emotional support, the ones to fill the void within. But this very expectation can make the relationship feel heavy. Are you living in an emotional state that rises and falls based on how your children treat you? A replied message lifts your spirits all day, while silence sends you into sadness and self-doubt. When you let your emotions depend on your children, you not only lose your inner freedom, but also unintentionally create pressure in the relationship, making them feel burdened or overly expected. Emotional independence doesn't mean becoming cold. It means learning how to stand strong within your own inner world. When you learn how to generate your own joy, to nurture your own zest for life, you no longer need your children to do something to make you feel valued. And that very shift makes them feel more at ease around you because they are no longer carrying the emotional weight on your behalf. Imagine this. Instead of waiting for a phone call to feel cared for, you spend the afternoon walking in the park, tending to your plants, learning to paint, or joining an online class. When your child calls, they hear a warm, energized voice, not complaints or blame. They'll want to connect more because you've become someone they want to be around, not have to care for. Here are a few suggestions to help you begin withdrawing from emotional dependency. Identify personal sources of joy. Write down 5 things that excite or inspire you, regardless of whether they involve your children. This could be music, walking, cooking, reading, or painting. Create independent routines. Choose at least one activity each week that you do just for yourself, not for anyone else, and not needing company. Acknowledge your progress. Every time you move through a moment of sadness caused by being ignored or neglected, write it down. It's proof of your emotional growth. Reduce invisible expectations. Gently remind yourself every day, my children are not my only source of happiness. I can create happiness for myself. When you ease expectations from your children, you allow them to be themselves, free of pressure and burden. And you grant yourself the precious gift of emotional freedom. From that space, love becomes lighter, more sincere, unclouded by longing or disappointment. You don't need your children to do something to prove they love you. Love yourself first, so that every interaction, every conversation with your children comes from a place of fullness, not a void waiting to be filled. And once your emotional foundation is strong, it becomes easier to take the next step, one that may seem difficult but is truly essential. Setting clear boundaries so that love has form and respect has space. Love does not mean enduring everything. One of the most common misconceptions among parents, especially those from a self-sacrificing generation, is the belief that the more you tolerate, the more you love your children. But tolerance without boundaries turns love into a burden and kindness into something to be taken advantage of. Boundaries are not walls. They are how you protect your values in any relationship, even with your own children. When you set clear boundaries, you're not being harsh. You're saying, I love you, but I also love myself, and I will not accept being treated with disrespect. Have you ever accepted hurtful words just to keep the peace? Have you ever stayed silent when your child broke promises or behaved poorly simply to avoid tension? If so, it's time to make a change. Because when you remain silent in the face of unfairness, you're teaching your children that such behavior is acceptable. Boundaries are your way of declaring, I deserve to be treated kindly. And the beautiful thing is, you don't have to shout for that message to be heard. Calm, steady, and consistent action is your greatest strength. Start by identifying what you can no longer tolerate, such as your children yelling at you, ignoring your words, treating your home like a service station, or only calling when they need something. Recognizing inappropriate behavior is the first step to restoring fairness in the relationship. Here are a few actions you can take to set boundaries with grace. Clearly express your feelings and expectations. For example, I feel hurt when you raise your voice. If you don't speak calmly next time, I will step away from the conversation. Avoid over-explaining. Boundaries don't need justification. You don't need to apologize for protecting yourself. Repeat your message calmly and consistently. If your child continues to cross the line, repeat your boundary in a composed manner. Consistency is key. Set clear consequences, not to punish, but to reinforce the reality of the boundary. For instance, if you don't arrive on time, I won't wait next time. When you begin to establish boundaries, you may face reactions, anger, sadness, or resistance from your children. But remember, those initial emotions don't reflect the value of what you're doing. They are simply part of the adjustment process to restore balance. And eventually, you'll discover something deeply valuable. Boundaries don't push your children away. They help rebuild the relationship on a stronger foundation. One built on respect, not fear, on freedom, not obligation. And once you've learned to say no to what's no longer acceptable, it's time to turn your attention to another vital aspect. Stop giving what is not appreciated, so your kindness is no longer taken for granted. There is a quiet kind of exhaustion, the kind that comes from constantly giving only to receive silence or worse, disregard in return. Many parents have done, and are still doing, everything they can for their children, offering financial support, caring for grandchildren, lending their home, cooking, cleaning. Yet the more they give, the more invisible they feel. Why is that? Because when something is always available, people tend to take it for granted. Kindness, without clear boundaries, is easily mistaken for obligation. And when you're always willing to help, even when you're tired, hurt, or overextended, you are unintentionally teaching your children, my parents will always be there, no matter how I treat them. This doesn't mean you should become selfish or indifferent. It means you must know when to stop. Support only holds true value when it exists within the context of gratitude and respect. Without that, it ceases to be love and becomes a one-sided sacrifice. Ask yourself, have you ever given money without receiving so much as a thank you? Have you cared for your grandchild while you were sick just because your child asked? Have you cleaned their house and they didn't even notice? If these things happen repeatedly without acknowledgement, it's time to draw a line. Setting limits doesn't mean cutting ties. It means being selective. It means deciding, I'll help when I feel it's right and reasonable. Otherwise, I will use my time and energy to care for myself. Here are a few ways to stop giving unconditionally. Re-evaluate each time you offer support. Ask yourself, am I doing this out of love or out of fear of being left out? If it's fear, pause. Pause to observe reactions. Step back for a while. See if your child notices your absence. Sometimes silence teaches the most powerful lessons. Communicate expectations before helping. For example, I can watch the kids this Tuesday, but I need you to pick them up on time. I have an appointment. Acknowledge ingratitude. Don't ignore it. If you feel dismissed, Say so, gently but clearly. It makes me sad to help and not even be thanked. Once you learn to honor the value of what you give, your children will begin to see you differently. They will realize nothing in life is permanently free, and every act of help deserves appreciation. You don't have to give everything to be loved. Give from a conscious heart so that every gesture holds value and every relationship is based on mutual respect. And once you've learned to protect your own energy, the next step is this: build a life of your own, rich and fulfilling, so your children are no longer the sole center of your world. One of the most attractive qualities in a person at any age is the vibrancy that comes from within. When you have your own joy, passion, and purpose, you radiate an energy that draws others in. They want to be near you, to understand you, to listen. And in the parent-child relationship, this is no exception. Many parents, after their children grow up and start their own families, find themselves in a void. They were once busy, central figures in the household, the ones their children relied on every day. Now, with their children living independently, they feel left behind, and the natural reaction is to try to insert themselves into their children's lives, seeking attention, involvement, and the feeling of being needed. But the truth is, the more you try to fill your own emptiness with your child's life, the more distant they become. They begin to feel controlled, restricted, and the relationship shifts from warmth to tension. What you need is not another role in someone else's life, but to rebuild your role in your own. Have you ever asked yourself, who am I without my children? If the answer is unclear, that's your starting point. Rediscover what once sparked joy in you. It could be art, gardening, writing, cooking, volunteering, learning a new language, traveling, investing in your health, or simply enjoying a cup of coffee with old friends. Each hobby is a new breath of life, a way for you to redefine yourself, not just as someone's mum or someone's dad, but as a complete individual. Living with purpose doesn't just make you happier, it earns natural respect from your children. When you have a fulfilling life of your own, your children will begin to see you as a role model, someone who embraces life, respects boundaries, and knows how to care for themselves. They will stop seeing you as someone who needs to be managed or helped, and start seeing you as an independent, admirable person. Here are a few ways to begin building your own meaningful life. Spend time on what you enjoy, with no justification needed. You don't have to be useful to do what brings you joy. Happiness is reason enough. Find new communities. Join a yoga group, a sculpture class, a choir, a book club. Meeting like-minded people brings fresh inspiration. Set personal goals. Whether it's walking 3 times a week or writing your memoir, every goal gives your life direction and movement. Stop waiting around for your children. Don't let your schedule revolve around them. Let them see that you are busy with yourself. And most importantly, remind yourself, you don't need to be respected by your children to have worth. You are worthy simply because you are alive, learning, and growing, even at 60, 70, or beyond. When you create a life that is rich and purposeful, you not only nourish yourself, you also teach your children a powerful lesson. That independence is something to be admired. Thank you for taking the time to listen, not just to the words I've shared, but to your own inner voice. If you've stayed with me until the end of this video, I believe you are someone who is truly making an effort to heal and rebuild your relationship with your children, with maturity and love. Together, we've reflected on familiar behaviors that may have quietly eroded respect within the family, seeking approval, over-sacrificing, losing our boundaries, and neglecting our own lives. But we've also explored another path, gentle, profound, and full of dignity, that leads us toward the respect we deserve. I invite you to pause for a moment and ask yourself, what did I learn today? What resonated with me the most? And if I were to begin with just one small step, what would that be? Please share it with me, because every personal story carries the power to inspire someone else walking a similar path. If you found this video helpful, click like and consider sharing it with a friend who may also be struggling in their family relationships. Who knows, your small act of sharing today might be the light that helps someone else out of a place of hurt. I hope this isn't just a passing message, but the beginning of a real journey. A journey where we continue to learn, to heal, and to grow, no matter our age. And if there's anything more you'd like to share, or a topic you'd like to see explored in depth, don't hesitate to leave a comment. I read every message with care and deep respect, because you deserve a peaceful life, authentic relationships, and a strong inner self, even if you are starting over from within.